Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 355 of the Stacey West podcast. I am Ben, the man with the Lego hair, and I'm joined by the man with little hair all the way from Gibraltar. I'm joined by Charlie Beeston. How are you doing, my good man?
Little hair? Little hair? I mean, what's little about it? Look, I said this the other day, right, when Gary tried to make the same point on the Deadline Day Live. My hair is growing out so much because I can't seem to get a bloody appointment at the barber's. Mainly because I haven't properly tried. And I'm just going to wait until it's that long. And I'm going to do exactly what I did last time. Get drunk and just get someone else to clip it and be knelt down in their bathroom and have my head shaved. Way to go, innit?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. I've never quite gone with an all-over buzz. I feel that my head shape would not suit that very much, but
neither.
Well, no, that's true, I suppose. But how you been? I mean,
what do you mean that's true? You literally saw it all off, and now you're insulting me again with the hair. Honestly,
I'm not insulting. Honestly. I'm just repeating back what you said to me. That's how it goes. But, how you been, mate? You've been keeping well since the manic evening rather that was Monday. How you been?
Yeah, do you know what? It's been a very busy week. Obviously, Monday was fantastic. We always love it, don't we? Getting to do those Deadline Day lives. And I mean, first of all, just getting to sit and have a conversation basically with you, Gaz and Chris, for 4 hours straight. Like I said, it's always really enjoyable. Then Tuesday, me and Chris then did another podcast. So I was talking to him then for another hour and a half. And then yesterday I was out at more football. So it's been a very football heavy sort of week. But no, it's been really good. And I'll tell you, I last Friday on my lunch break at work, bit of context. I knew I was getting a parcel delivered here from back home. And in Gibraltar, when you get parcels delivered to you, you get a little slip through your letterbox to tell you that you have to go and collect it. So I got this little slip through, and then last Friday lunchtime, I was going to go and collect it from the post office. Went to the post office. Turns out it's the wrong post office. I mean, for those people that know how small Gibraltar is, please explain to me why there's bloody two post offices. But there was two post offices. So I then went again today on my lunch break and managed to pick up my parcel, which means I have now got my first Lincoln City shirt of this season. The last few years I've had all three, but this is the first one of the season. That's the all black one for audio listeners. The people on YouTube will be able to see it. So yeah, I am a big fan of this shirt properly in person now that I'm wearing it. My sister bought it for me as well, so I better say thank you to her.
No, it is nice. I do like that shirt. It's not a massive fan of the results we've had while we've been playing in it. I'm not going to lie, but you can
say that about any of the shirts for parts of this season, can't you?
Yeah, all right. That is a fair point. But no, look, it has been a busy week. I've been absolutely off my feet with the day job as well. Also got a preview recorded last night for the Cambridge game, so we'll play a little snippet of that a little bit later on with Jack from the Under the Abbey Stand podcast. It's a decent watch. I think it's already up on YouTube as of this morning, so if you've not seen it yet, go check that out. But we will, as I say, play a clip a little bit later on. But let's sort of scoot back to Monday, I think, because there was a lot that came out of that of that evening. No signings, obviously. That was, I think, one of the things that people are maybe most disappointed about. But I think the other thing that people are probably very disappointed about was the conversation around Paulie O'Connor with Jez towards the end of the evening. But we'll just park that for a second. Overall, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that tuned in and caught any of it on Monday night. I thought, as you said, it was just nice to sit and, have the conversations, all four of us rotating in and out. And a friend of mine, actually, who is a Premier League fan, doesn't like League One football at all. He said he actually watched the stream back during his day job on Tuesday because he was sort of working from home, put it on in the background, thought it was something to listen to. He said I ended up paying attention for the whole thing, and yeah, it was a pretty humbling one, to be honest. Like somebody that doesn't like that football at all, he's like, oh, I've subscribed now and I'll be following, maybe not just following Lincoln, because I know you'll love that and I don't want that to happen, but I'll be following the league in general. But I mean, obviously, earlier on, it started off with an interview with Conor McGrandles, where I spoke to him about what it's like for a player on deadline day with the move. I found that really fascinating. Obviously, the big outcome of it is that there's a lot of stress involved, which is understandable, particularly if you are, moving across the country. You've got to make a snap decision sometimes on deadline day. Sometimes it's been brewing for a while. But it was good to get that perspective from it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. First of all, Conor's brilliant. He's been on before and given us some insight. And, for him to do it again, first of all, was, it's always a great opportunity for those sorts of things, isn't it? And yeah, honestly, I'm totally with you. I love hearing the untold stories behind things like deadline day and honestly, to do with anything in football. Obviously, we did kind of the medical side of it, didn't we, 6 months back? But now to get it properly from a player's point of view that isn't always documented, it's often just done through journalists' eyes from the outside looking in. They're the only time you really get to hear about things like deadline day moves. But to ask the questions, like you say, look, a lot of these players are young lads that are moving miles and miles away from home, at, like you say, sometimes just the drop of a hat. And I think Gaz made the point on Monday, and it's totally true. Sometimes we forget, don't we, that these players aren't just players, but they are, like you say, young lads. They're football. They're humans. They're people. They're not just assets that are bought and sold, even though sometimes in football that's very much the way it's portrayed. So again, I think the way that we kind of got to see that, look at it from, I guess, the emotional point of view as well from the player side, was really, really fascinating. And again, I think Conor just spoke fantastically well on that, not just from his personal experience, but from those he knows kind of around the industry that have been in similar positions.
Yeah, I think the thing for me that was not surprise as such, but it opened my eyes a little bit when he said about he was pushing for the move because he knew that he wasn't going to be getting the game time. And I mean, sometimes you kind of think if a player goes somewhere, it's because another club has come in and that's it. Cool, right? We are selling this player. They are going. Doesn't matter what they say. But ultimately, and this is a conversation that we'll touch on a little bit later, it will come down to what the player wants to do. You can't force a player to go and sign for somebody else. You can't, even if it is a £2 million move for somebody, you can't just say they're offering us £2 million. He's like, well, I don't want to go. Ultimately, it will come down to the player's decision. So, yeah, really interesting stuff from Conor. I was delighted to get the opportunity to do it. Unfortunately, Gaz's neighbours started doing some building work, so I had to step in at the last minute on that one. But yeah, no, really good stuff. Go check that out. I've split the two interviews up on YouTube as well. I was going to try and get them out as an audio podcast, but I just didn't have the time this week to do it. So yeah, there was that. And then we kind of just went through regular podcasty bits, I think, until towards the end of the night. And then about 9:20, Jez came on and we had a good sit down with Jez for just over half an hour, I think it was in the end. And I think some of the stuff that was said was quite sobering. I mean, obviously we did discuss it on Monday briefly, but we've had a little bit of time to digest it and think some of the things through that he said. And obviously it's it's out there in the public. We've seen some of the reaction to it, and I just wanted to get your take on it after a couple of days, Charlie. How did you see it, and what in there either concerned you, excited you, or any other emotions attached to it?
Look, I think first of all, in terms of Jez just being nice, open, and honest, obviously we always know he's going to do that. It's Jez. He's honestly got such a great reputation for constantly being so transparent. He does it with us any time that we have a sit down with him, doesn't he, Ben? And it's always really great to kind of get that stance on it from his point of view. In terms of some of the things he said, I think first of all, he was realistic about where we are. in terms of compared to other teams in the division. He used a pretty decent example of literally on the day we got blown out of the water when we were absolutely signed, sealed, delivered, almost anyway, ready for a player to be coming in on loan with a buy option in the summer and got blown out of the water by another League One club. Look, that's going to happen with the position that we're in. It's not an excuse. Jez, I don't think at any point wanted to come on there and say, we're not higher in the league because we don't have the money or anything like that. No, it's not that. It's just explaining the context so that then when he does give us the information that he gives us, we are all able to kind of understand that with the wider knowledge. And that's exactly what you kind of want. That transparency isn't just about telling you, oh, we're after such and such. It's about explaining, okay, here's why we didn't get the player that we were maybe after. And again, he didn't have to tell us that. He didn't have to tell us that we were after a player or anything like that we then didn't end up getting. But he chose to. Now, that was that. That was by the by. Of course, there was plenty of guessing games and such trying to figure out who that player was, as there always is, isn't there? That's what transfer speculation's about. And honestly, that's what we all kind of love about the transfer window. We all love kind of delving into the rumours, figuring out are there any chances of such and such a player moving just because one journalist has said it on Twitter, and little things like that. So, yeah, obviously that was great. But what was really interesting for me was, of course, him stating that we had 2 significant bids for 2 significant players. I think that was probably the biggest thing to come out of the interview in terms of just like a one little soundbite. Now, there's 2 sides to this, isn't there? So we don't know who the players are. We don't know what the bids are or anything like that. So obviously we can only really talk here speculatively rather than saying, oh, well, if I was in that position, I would have taken that deal, because we don't know. We don't know what the deal was.
Yeah.
But there's, like I said, there's very much 2 sides to this. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because people have different opinions, which is fine. But the people who maybe don't like the transfer strategy that the club have tried to employ over the last however many years will use that as a stick to beat Jez and the club with, of sort of saying, oh, well, you've not sold this player. What's the point of having the model if we're not going to be making a profit and things like that? And again, I get that point of view, because at some point, of course, we're going to need to be making profit if we want to then spend the necessary money to bring in the players. Otherwise, there's always that argument that we're going to be playing second fiddle forever to the likes of other sides in League One. But then my viewpoint, and I think, again, I'm not going to speak for yourself, Ben, because I'm sure you'll kind of put your viewpoint on it in a moment. But what I think your viewpoint might be as well is that, look, we, as fans of the football club, want our club to be ambitious. I think there are certain players in our team who have got the ability to play further up. That's either at the very top end of League One or potentially bottom end to mid-end Championship. Personally, I think Ethan Arahan, I think Porgy O'Connor can make the step up. I think, honestly, Sean Rowan can. And then there's, there are a range of others. I honestly think that Ben House can be a Championship striker. I don't necessarily think he's shown himself in as good a light this season as what he did when he got the 14 goals in a season, but I still don't think he's been bad by any stretch of the imagination. So we all think that there's these players that can step up. So why would we necessarily want to get rid of them yet? Let's see if they can take us to that point. And for me, I want Lincoln City to have the best possible players. And to have the best possible players, I want us to be keeping our significant players at the moment. But when a good enough offer comes in, sometimes you then obviously have to consider it.
Yeah, I think I do agree for the most part. I think that the bone of contention with a lot of people is going to be Pordy O'Connor, because, as we mentioned, there's going to be the discussion that we've had before on the pod around, it's similar to the Regan Poole situation, where, it's looking more and more likely that in the summer, Pordy O'Connor will go on a free and he will go to another club. I'm not the biggest fan of that scenario, if I'm honest, because obviously I would like to see Pordy go for a fee. We would make some sort of return on whatever it is that we've put in. And the chances are that, if it is a quote unquote serious fee or a serious offer, that suggests to me that it's well into the 6-figure sums.
Although it may not have been Pordy that was the subject of that.
Well, yeah, we are assuming that it was Pordy. So, look, I think if it is, and we did reject bids for Pordy O'Connor, then I understand it from the point of view of we could do with him on the pitch, and we know what he brings to the table. We know he's an excellent defender and he's our captain and all the rest of it. I understand the point of view from a lot of fans where, because I'm kind of in the same boat of, if he's not going to sign, why don't we try and make as much money as we can for him now? The problem there for me comes in when you turn around and say, okay, Pordy hasn't signed a new contract. Let's sell him. The offers come in. We take an offer. Pordy agrees to the contract, because that's the other part of it that we mentioned earlier. Pordy O'Connor has to agree to leave the football club. He has to agree to a contract at another club. And as I think Chris mentioned it on Monday, if a club has a set budget for a transfer, they, let's say it was a £300,000 offer. Off the top of my head, we don't know what the offer was. But let's say, for example, somebody comes in, offers 300 grand and says, there's the offer, Pordy, this is the contract offer. The problem there is that that's their total budget. If they don't have to pay that initial 300 grand, then there is the potential that the wages could be a lot bigger if and when he does go. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening, but it's potentially there. And I understand it, because it is, again, it comes down to the fact that we say this every single time when a player leaves the football club to go to somewhere else. If somebody else offers you double your salary to go and work for them, you are not going to turn it down.
God, they could offer me an extra £5. It's more money.
But that's the thing. I think, and I'm probably going to take pelters for this, but I think there are some people that see this as a special job, and Lincoln City is a special club for everybody that comes here, and that they are owed. Every player needs to be completely loyal to the football club and everything else. It's a job. It is a job to these players at the end of the day. If they can get more money somewhere else, and they would be happy doing so, that's their prerogative. So, look, we can talk all day about the situation. I'm not completely enamored about the fact that we're going to lose him on a free in the summer. Andy has mentioned in the chat, he says, who's to say he won't sign a new contract? I would be very surprised if that happens, because the chances are that if he does go on a free, he would be, well, as we've spoken about with that unnamed player that was due to come to us, we would likely be blown out of the water by a majority of clubs, because, the wages in this league are getting ridiculous now. So, yeah, I mean, it's all speculation, but I'm not the biggest fan of players going on a free at the end of their contract if there is value to be had from the club. However, the other side of that is, if we did get 300 grand for a central defender, what caliber of central defender could we bring in using that money and also sticking to the club's wage structure? It would have to be, a player that potentially some may deem as a quote project player. We would potentially have to break the wage structure if we wanted to bring in somebody of Pordy's quality. There's a lot of moving parts to this that doesn't make it as simple as, well, he's going in the summer, so we should have sold him now. It's a tricky one, and this is where I don't envy the people that work at the club, because it's a much more complex situation than a lot of people will ever give it credit for. So that's Pordy. But I think overall, the feedback that we've had on it has mostly been very positive. And obviously we do thank the people that can, that have made it happen and have been able to come in. And as Andy says, lots of ifs, buts, and maybes. Indeed, if ifs and buts were chips and puts and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think there was some sobering conversations that were had with Jez, particularly again around the finances in the division. Is there anything else that you want to add to that before we go on to a couple of other topics?
Look, all I would say is, at the end of the day, nobody from the club, nobody in the fans, maybe not even Pordy himself, nobody's going to want Pordy O'Connor to leave on a free transfer, of course. But like you said, sometimes these things happen, and like Jez pointed out, it's how we got him. Of course, it is, and it's how we'll get plenty of players in the future, and it's how plenty of players will leave us in the future. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, we are, and we can talk about how unlikely this is. Of course, I think it's unlikely. I think it's almost as unlikely as what it was this time last season. But we're 5 points outside the playoffs. As far as I'm concerned, I want to see the best Lincoln City side every time we step out onto the pitch. And I want to see the best Lincoln City side over the next few months to at least after, and I always say after Easter, if you're still in with a shout, then it's a great season. So I want to be after Easter, still being with even a long shot, even 6 points behind, but mathematically still possible. I want to still be in with a shot at playoffs after Easter, because the way I see that is still actually progression, not regression. Even though last season we may have finished in 7th, or was it 7th or 8th in the end? I think it was only 7th, wasn't it? 7th. So last season we finished 7th, and this season we finished 9th. And people are like, oh yeah, but we've dropped places, we're going backwards. I totally disagree, because you've got to take into context the wider league. So I always say year on year, all I want to see is at least some form of progression, whether that is in terms of league position, whether that is actually in terms of things like a promotion, or whether it's making sure that we are in a much more stable position than maybe what we are the season before. And honestly, I just feel like if we can get ourselves sat, on the precipice of the playoffs after Easter again, then I'll be a happy man. And I think Pordy O'Connor is the sort of player that we will need to be there. But like you say, at the end of the day, he's still here, so there's nothing we can do about it now.
No, I agree on that 100%. He is the kind of player that we'll need here if we want to mount that challenge. I think that word progression is a possibly a contentious one, because how do you judge progression at this point?
It's subjective.
Is it going to be, well, we've kept hold of all of our big players and we mounted another push, or we managed to gain one place in the division, or we've lost slightly less money than we did last year? Where does that line get drawn? But I think the club is progressing. It's not. This is actually something that we touched on with Jack from the Abistan pod in the preview, and we said there is a very big difference between the team and the club. I think regardless of people's opinions on the team and the 11 that go out and how the results are going, how the performances are going, I think there's a very big difference between team progression and club progression. They're closely linked, but I think at the moment the club is progressing in the right way. I think the team is going through a sticky patch, but I think we'll get there. I genuinely do. But we'll shift gears slightly, and we will talk about the general fallout from the window. So obviously, a few incomings, one outgoing that maybe was a bit confusing in Dylan Duffy. But I think overall it was a decent transfer window. Obviously, James Collins coming in is going to be the headline for a lot of people, and the holding on to the likes of Ethan Arahan. But obviously, as we just discussed, the Pordy O'Connor one is a different one. I think the interesting one for me is really going to be, I think, a couple of the loans. The couple of the lads that have gone out on loan. I think JJ McKiernan is really the one that piqued my interest, because it's not that common that we see a player go out on loan to a team in the same division as us. So I'll be really interested to see how he comes back. And I'm sure we'll speak to Dave from BBC Radio Derby ahead of the Burton game a bit later on, and he'll be able to tell us how he's getting on. But the one with the biggest question mark, Charlie, is Sam Clucas. Now, obviously, there's a lot of, as there always is, rumor, speculation, and innuendo around the situation with Sam Clucas. Is it as cut and dried as is being portrayed, or is there something more, deeply sinister hidden away behind the between the lines wording, whatever it is that people are saying, and all of the potentials that are out there? Personally, I don't think it's as black and white as is in the press. However, I don't think it's anywhere near as sinister as what is being said elsewhere. So I've yet to see any of the press conference yet. I've just, again, not had the time to do so, but you saw the press conference. So if you want to take that away and just say, what was said around Sam today.
Yeah. So it was Tom Shaw doing the pre-match press conference today, which, for the record, he's done a couple of those and a couple of the post-match press conferences now. Now, obviously, who knows what reason there is for that, but I'm actually quite a fan of that. I just want to get that in there now. We spoke a lot at length, didn't we, last season, that Tom Shaw could very easily become a manager at some point. So I am looking forward to kind of hearing more from him when he gets the opportunities. So I feel like it's really good progression opportunities for him. But anyway, in terms of Sam Clucas, first of all, Tom Shaw stated that he is very much in contention for a position this Saturday and to be in the squad. Now, honestly, if I'm predicting, I would very much doubt that would be a start. But it seems as though it wouldn't be too much of a surprise to see him on the bench, which, again, I'm quite pleased with. Now, the questions came in from BBC Radio Lincolnshire regarding, first of all, a little bit around the speculation of, is Sam Clucas a club signing? Is he a Jez signing, or is he a Skubala and manager signing and coaching staff signing? I don't buy into that, but I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But then there was also the conversation around, well, why have we signed a player who isn't fit for the first 2.5 weeks? Now, first of all, we've signed players that aren't fit for the first 6 weeks. So 2.5 weeks is actually quite good. Look, I get why the question is asked, because I understand the frustration behind it. The minute you have a signing, if you make a signing on a Friday afternoon and you know that they've been registered, let's say, before the 12 o'clock cutoff, you want to see them playing on a Saturday. Of course you do. We're all like that. We all want to see our new signings. They're the interesting ones. They're the ones you're always looking out for on the first game of the season or the first game of January or anything like that. You want to see them play. So I get the frustration. I do. I get frustrated at it at times as well. But with this one, I think it was always kind of made quite clear that this was going to be a phasing in for Sam, giving him a couple of opportunities, and then hopefully his input for the team could be quite large for the last couple of months of the season. Now, there's also got to be the conversation as well, hasn't there, around what his impact is. We're talking about James Collins a lot as, yeah, all right, he's going to be this prolific goal scorer. That's great. And he's already shown that he can do that. But what's also really good, and what he's spoken about all the time with James Collins, is the help that he can provide Jovan and Draper and any of our other attacking players to be able to get them to the same position that we feel like James Collins is in terms of in front of goal, ideally. So that's great. So, and it's right. He's a mentor for the group. Now, I don't really get why Sam Clucas isn't being kind of held in the same vein as that for the midfield area of the pitch. Now, also Tom Shaw stated that it's a very kind of tactical side of the game, the position that he's going to be playing in, which, again, shows that he's going to be playing games, the fact that they're talking about that. So why not? They want to kind of have him learn that side of it before just chucking him in the deep end, which is what you want, because quite frankly, it can turn very sour onto a new player very quickly if they're not immediately up to speed. So why should we put him in the spotlight for that, especially when you bear in mind some of the other players that we have in those positions in that midfield? So again, I just feel like I get the questions and I get the frustration, but sometimes it's a little bit too kind of quick to jump down the throat of the club at the decisions like this. Now, like I say, then there was also the discussion regarding is this a club signing, as in is this a Jez signing, or is this a manager signing? Now, Lincoln City are never going to do that, are they? Let's be honest here. We've never been a club that are going to have different signings. Of course, there is due process that goes into every single signing. It's explained in any of Jez's, Michael's, Liam's, anybody's presentations that they do to fans to be able to give us all an insight into the transfer strategy. But never once are we going, as you know, let's say Clive, pick up the phone and go, right, you're signing this player right now. Because that's not how it works. It just doesn't. Not at Lincoln City. Not really in professional English football. That happens in Gibraltar, but that happens in.
I mean, the other thing to that, the other thing alongside that, right, is we are very much aware of how much players are costing. You know, we're hyper aware of how much players are costing in this division, and I think the idea that there is somebody that is a quote Jez signing that the manager doesn't want, I just feel that everything that Clive has said has been, we will not put the long-term security of the club at risk for one player or for any player. And I that quote has just stuck in my head for so long because it's the right way to do the business. You know, it's the right way to be as a football club. And I think if somebody tried to do that, I'd like to think that Clive would have them out on their ass pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, it's another conversation. It's another topic that has a million and one different opinions on. But the only thing I can think is personally, if Sam isn't in the squad, you know, regardless of the first 11, if he's not in the squad on Saturday, that noise is only going to get louder and louder. And I think it might sow a bit of dissension in the ranks, more so than there already is. But
if we win, no one will care.
No, absolutely not.
And I think this is the thing. Things like that. And again, I get it. There's always this kind of immediate layer of frustration when you kind of boil down. Look, I'm going to call it a conspiracy theory because in a way it is, because nobody knows the facts apart from those at the football club. You know, people that want to believe what they say publicly can. People that don't want to believe it can. But if we're in a really bad run of form and there's that layer of frustration already sat there, and then you've got this rumor conspiracy theory that you could also jump on, it's always going to get a little bit louder because more people are going to talk about it. Again, that's just the way society is in anything, let alone just football. And I understand it. I just personally don't really buy into it because I know the people, we all know the people at this football club and the way that they try to run things on a regular basis. They'll make mistakes. They'll sign wrong players. They get that, obviously. But at the end of the day, you know, they're always going to have the best interests of the club and its fans at their heart, and also the players. The way that the club treat individual players, they're not going to go ahead and sign Sam Clucas just to have him sat on the bench week in, week out, and never get a minute in because Skubala doesn't like him. Because they've also mentioned that there's a potential to have him in more of a coaching capacity further down the line. So why would they want to jeopardize that? I think sometimes it's just about taking a step back and thinking, okay, how much can we really buy into this based on everything we know? Absolutely.
So look, we are 34 minutes in now to the podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break for those on the audio. So you will hear the advert as you normally do. And then we'll come back and we will talk a little bit about Freddy Draper, and then we'll look ahead to the game at the weekend against Cambridge. So if you're watching live on YouTube, then you'll probably get a little bit extra, and we'll say hello. We'll see you in a sec. Hello, everybody on the YouTubes. Are we well? I'm getting through tonight. I think it's probably fair to say. Who we got in? So we've got Flossy Tops is in. Hey up and good evening. Andy is in as usual. Great evening and very good from Jez and Connor, only spoilt by the usual suspects. Quite. Really enjoyed the Monday deadline show. UTI says, to be honest, I don't think we had a great window, but I don't think it's bad as some people are making out. Absolutely. Who say won't sign a new contract? I think it's unlikely. I'm almost certain he'll get better offers than we're able to put on the table. Don't think he will renew, but I can't blame him if he leaves. I think that it happened with Regan Poole makes it that little bit more frustrating. I would
That's
agree.
A good point,
it's a precedent that's been set, and if it hadn't happened before, I think we'd probably be okay with it. The other thing as well to remember is Regan Poole was a lot younger than Paulie O'Connor. There's a lot more available in Regan Poole's future, I think, because Paudie's 27. How old was Regan when he left us? I want to say he was 23, 22, 23.
He'll have been. When was it? It was 18 months ago.
Yeah,
so he'd have been
years.
24.
Okay.
25. He's 26 now. Anyway.
Okay. 23, 24. Yeah, it's 24. Andy says when he left us, so that's fair enough. So yeah, there we go. Dom says Paudie will end up in a team in this division. Nothing to see here. This is regarding Sam. 2 + 2 = 6. Enlighten us on the Sinister talk, please. As Charlie said, there are conspiracy theories around who likes who and why he's not playing. Dom also said if Clucas plays poorly, it will be he's told too old, what a waste of money by the same people who push these conspiracies. When it's a local lad, the noise is always going to be a bit louder, especially when his friends or family are fans, says UTI. That's all the comments. Yeah, always good to have people live. And we will come back in 3, 2, 1. And there we go. So, right, that is the ad for the week. Again, no idea who it is because we don't get told in advance unless somebody's recording something for a fast food outlet. Now, all this talk about a player potentially going on a free in the summer, one that is definitely not leaving on a free in the summer will be Freddy Draper. He has put pen to paper on a new contract that will see him stay at the Imps until the summer of 2028. So that is a 3-year contract extension for Fred. Well, 3-year contract for Fred. And it's, I think it's one that may not split the fan base, but I think it's deserved. I think Fred is looking a little bit better over the past few weeks, and I think he's still got a future. Obviously, the club think that as well. Particularly as we've mentioned around, when James Collins is around him, he's going to be a good teacher to him, a good mentor. So yeah, initial thoughts on Freddy Draper signing a new contract, Charlie?
There is a lot in this, isn't there? There's a lot to dissect. Now, first of all, just the basic fundamental level. I'm happy. I'm a happy man. Strikers are always difficult to find, aren't they? Homegrown strikers are always difficult to find as well. And for us to have our own homegrown striker in the mold of Freddy Draper, it's always a real benefit, isn't it? And he's obviously highly rated. EFL clubs, mainly by the sounds of it, Walsall, were after him in both the summer and January windows, as it was stated in the press conference earlier on today. So just in terms of that, it shows that we've got a real good player on our hands. I really like Freddie. I think all he really needs is a good run of games in this Lincoln City squad, which, bearing in mind, since he came back from his loan spell at Walsall this time last year, he's never really had more than 5 or 6 games starting up top in a row. And honestly, I think if he gets that, he's going to just continue to improve to the point where he will just be the regular number 9 and he will wear Lincoln City's number 9 shirt, which again, he's at the start of his career and he's, a Lincoln City Academy prospect is really, really promising. Now, I said there was lots to this because there's something else that jumped out at me when the news first came out that I want to just touch on. When his contract ends, Freddy Draper will still be 23 years old. Now, that's really important for 2 reasons. First of all, bloody hell, he's young. He's younger than me, and I get called a fetus. Number 2, he will be under 24, which means as it does with Sean Rowan, he will not leave on a free, even if he leaves at the end of his contract. Any club that signs him on a free contract agreement or anything like that will have to pay us compensation. And considering the amount that he is playing in the EFL and the amount of investment that we clearly put in him from a very young age, I can imagine that will be quite a nice, substantial number. So, no matter what here, this is an incredible move for us as a football club. We could have extended it, I'm sure, by another year, but then we'd have shot ourselves in the foot because then he could have left on a free at the age of 24.
Yeah.
This deal, I just think it's a really, really smart piece of business. The club will have been totally open with Freddie about that. And also, it protects the asset value, first of all, like I was saying there, but also it means that we get to keep our young striker at the football club for the next 3.5 years. And that, again, is a real, real good piece of business. I really like Freddie. I think he's still got so much raw potential that can be built upon. I wouldn't be too surprised to be seeing him playing at the top end League One. Hopefully, obviously, with Lincoln over the next few years. And he's still potentially 7 years away from his prime. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. Regardless of what happens, we will be due some sort of compensation at the end of this contract. I think the compensation, if I remember rightly, is also not based on like a market value, but based on the amount of money that the club has spent developing the player. If that's
there is a formula.
But there's some weird
primary factor. The primary factor is the amount of money that has been spent on developing Freddy Draper as a footballer. And also, I think there is a little bit in terms of things like games played and all of this.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, look, I still think Freddie has an awful lot to offer this football club. I think he's if he can kick on in the way that I think a lot of us are hoping that he can, I would be delighted to see him. Hopefully, as you say, be our starting number 9 in a couple of years. As Andy said in the chat, playing alongside Collins is going to be a massive boost because he is still a very young player. If 20-year-old striker that so far has 4 goals this season so far, and he's only played a handful of games. It's not bad going. So yeah, I'm pleased for Freddie, and I'm pleased for the club because, again, as you say, from a purely business perspective, it's safeguarding the asset, I think, is the term that should be used there. But no, look, we'll move away from that one now. Freddie will be a Lincoln City player for a while yet, or we'll get a fee for him or whatever it will be. So we'll look ahead to Saturday. The Imps host the Basement Club, Cambridge United. They are in a very bad place at the moment. I think they've had one win in forever. It's not looking great for them right now. They are trying to look up, but they're finding it a bit hard. So I had a conversation with Jack from the Under the Abbey Stand podcast. And here is a couple of minutes of Jack talking about how they saw the season at the start and how they're looking at it now.
I think generally the kind of situations we go into a season is always thinking about survival. I think that when we're in League One, I think it has to be that because we're one of the smaller teams, regardless of any other situation in the league. And I think this year, League One has been the hardest it's ever been when we've been back in it. I think you look at the teams at the top and they've got money to spend and millions to spend as it is. But you also look at the teams in around mid-table and towards the bottom, and they've got 2-3 times our wage budget and more money to throw at players. So I think we needed to be realistic. I think survival should have been the aim at the start of the season, as it always is. And I think we had a big turnover in the summer. Quite a few players left. Quite a few new ones came in. And I think it will have had to be about, ironically starting well and trying to build a bit of a platform this season. And we had such an awful start, it kind of governed it. But in answer to the second part of the question, I think, to be honest, I think we just have to look towards survival. We've got a bit of a mini season ahead of us now, really. You just have to look at the table and think, can we get out of this? And we turned around an 8-point deficit in 9 games at the back end of a season a couple of seasons ago. So it's very doable. That's the deficit we have now. now. And, there's still plenty of games for us to get through, 18 games left in the season. So I think we just have to look at it like that and think, yeah, we can get out of this and take it a game at a time, really.
Put your phone down.
I did not realise how long that was.
So yeah, look, that was Jack. It was a really good chat, actually. We spoke a lot about how the season's going. Obviously, it's not going great. How they're playing. Turns out they're actually playing some decent football at times. It's just there are holes all over the pitch that they are trying to plug, and not necessarily doing so successfully. So, run of games for Cambridge coming up. Obviously, they've got ourselves on Saturday. We then have Birmingham away. They have Birmingham away. They then have Exeter and Stockport at home, followed by Crawley away. Couple of games that you think are real 6-pointers alongside some really, really difficult ones there for Cambridge. It's I think this season and the league itself, we've said, that there've been some people saying, it's a much of a muchness in terms of the quality. I think it is for a team of maybe our quality, but for a team like Cambridge who are destined to struggle regardless of what happens in the division, I think they're just getting sucked down into the mire at the minute, aren't they, Charlie?
Yeah, look, they are a very, very poor side. Honestly, not surprised. I think many people saw this coming into the season, that it was very much always going to go like that. And it has. In terms of some of the stats, by the way, most of them paint them in a really, really negative light. The one that I think stands out the most to me in terms of just those baseline stats is the fact that they have only won one away game all season. And that was against Stevenage, who have also struggled at certain points over the year as well. So that is obviously really promising for us. What could be interesting on Saturday is the fact that Cambridge typically don't want any of the ball. They have got the third lowest average possession in the league this season. Now, granted, we're only fifth lowest, so it could be that kind of age-old adage of two teams that neither of them want the ball. Obviously, I doubt that it's quite going to be like that. But yeah, they certainly aren't going to be trying to come at us with some free-flowing football away from home. It's just not going to happen. Now, it's interesting though, because they're not goal scorers. I think they're one of the worst in the league in terms of goals per match. They are second worst in the league in terms of goals conceded per match. Granted, that is just only ahead of Peterborough, who, again, we all know how poor they were. So hopefully another 5-1. But it interestingly, their XG, and I know XG, but their XG puts them a lot higher in the league than where they actually are, showing that, yeah, exactly what you were talking to Jack about. There is a good chance that they do play a little bit better football than maybe what their results are showing, but there's clearly weaknesses in there that we can exploit, especially defensively, and that's what we are going to want and need to do if we are to get a result. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that difficult to get a result, but we're never going to take anything for granted, of course. Now, what's interesting is as well, they, in terms of their kind of defensive style, they're not exactly always on you. There will be opportunities to actually just dribble with the ball into those areas. Potentially then this is a game for the likes of Tom Bayliss in the midfield if he wants to try and do that. But then also I'm thinking more Rico Hackett on that left wing-back role, and potentially Tendai Derico on the right-hand side as well, because he very much likes to move the ball forward as well. So there's a couple of those situations where I think if we simply have that confidence within ourselves to get at them, to take the game to them, to literally take the ball to them, rather than trying to go a little bit too fancy, I honestly do think that we've got a great opportunity to get not just a good result, but a really, really good performance as well. And just lift that confidence back up towards where it was after those Northampton-Peterborough games.
Yeah, but it's only Cambridge, Charlie. It's only Cambridge. Look, I agree with you. I think if we go at them early, similar to like we did against Peterborough and like we did away at Huddersfield, we didn't have any fear. I think if we play like that on Saturday and we really press them high, it sounds like their link-up play between defence and midfield is quite poor. So if we can exploit that area, which we know we can do, I will be on for something here at the weekend. I think in the prediction I said 2-0 to Jack. I would probably suggest that we maybe go a little bit higher than that from what we're looking at here. But I mean, you look through some of the results recently. They drew against Bolton. They beat Mansfield 3-2 at home. They lost to Rotherham, but then they drew against Wickham at home. Obviously, Wickham were down to 10 men. So there is a slightly renewed sense of optimism among the fan base. So I say that we're looking at a potential decent scoreline, decent win. There's always the nerves, and like you say, if they've only won one away game all season, yeah, it's one of those where you get a little bit nervy. But one thing I didn't realise actually until I started looking into this. Cambridge have signed 2 goalkeepers in this window. They signed Marco Morosi, and then he got injured quite badly. I think he tore his hamstring. So then they've signed Nathan Bishop from Sunderland on loan at the end of the window. It sounds like they've had a real time of it with injuries as well. And obviously, we can say the same thing about pretty much any club in the division at this point. But I mean, are there any people any players that stand out for you, Charlie? From an opposition point of view, I know when we were talking about it, Jack was saying that Josh Stokes is a player that really stands out for him. In terms of goal scoring, I brought up Elias Kachunga, and he said that the thing is, Kachunga's not necessarily played all that well. He's just gotten on the end of things and scored for them. So it sounds like the kind of player we need at some point, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Stokes seems to be the man, doesn't he?
No, absolutely. And honestly, in terms of the players that they've got, and it sounds a little bit arrogant, but there's not that many that really fill me with a lot of dread. All that I do know is that Daniel Lundaloo will inevitably score, because that's just the way it goes, isn't it?
No, he won't. He won't. He's injured.
What? Is he? Is he injured? Right.
Yes.
Well, there we go. Didn't know that. So good. I am glad. No, well, no, okay. I didn't mean it like that. You know what I meant.
But he won't be playing against us.
Exactly. And honestly, I thought one of their best signings that they made earlier on in the January window was Marco Morosi. And obviously I did know that he had gotten injured. And they clearly lacked kind of some exceptional goalkeeping, shall we say, over the first half of the campaign. So they definitely needed to kind of shore that up. And honestly, I thought the signing of Marco Morosi was going to do that. Obviously, didn't end up coming to fruition properly in the end. But no, honestly, outside of that, again, they've got quite a weak squad compared to what they've had over the last few years as well. And it really just seems to me like Cambridge are one of those sides that, as a fan, you kind of look forward to playing in a season like this, because we do need a bit of a confidence booster. And again, it sounds really, really arrogant, because it's not going to be a walkover. Cambridge are going to give us a tough game. That, of course, they will, especially like you say, with a bit of newfound confidence. No, of course they are. Of course they are. And there'll become a point potentially in a few weeks where we're not fighting for anything. And it'll be these sorts of games that I fear more. But I just think at the moment there's that little bit of a boost again for us. And we've just got to kind of turn that around. And I think that a game against Cambridge is the perfect opportunity to do that. Again, not underestimating the challenge that they could give us.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think it sounds like they've just got that siege mentality right now, and it's just how much of the us against the world that they can actually keep together and maybe string something together. I feel for the fans a little bit, but ultimately it's not going to matter too much to me on Saturday. But yeah, definitely go and check out the preview and go and check out the Under the Abbey stand pod. They funny story. I actually had a little chat with Jack after the preview was finished, and I was saying, how have you guys found it so far? And he said they have been getting absolutely pelted from the people that listen to their podcast because they're too negative. And I said, what? I said, what? We are 5 points off the playoffs in League One. They're 8 points adrift and they're getting slated for being too negative. We are 5 points off the playoffs in League One and we're being told that we're too positive. It's the dichotomy of football never ceases to amaze me. But there we go. Right, I think there's one more little bit of news from the club. Just checking the website as we speak. Tickets are on sale for Birmingham away.
That's not news.
Well, I know, but people will want to go. They are on sale on the 7th of Feb. So Friday morning for gold, silver, and bronze members. But the main bit of news that's come out is that there will be a fans forum and an AGM on the 13th of March in the Legends Lounge. Now, about 2 years ago, probably, the fans forums would be, okay, we'll go and we'll listen to somebody ask why we don't leave a man up at corners and when are the toilets going to work.
It's a valid question.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the toilets work now. We have water in there; they work.
Yeah.
But I think last year, did you go to the one last year?
I did. So there was actually a conversation with the fan advisory board a couple years back around fans forums because realistically they needed a bit of a rejig, a little bit of a modernization rather than just. We're going to sit in a room. The club are just going to put Liam Scully, the manager, and Jez George and Clive or Harvey or whichever investor was over at the time on a table, and you can ask questions to them because that's all well and good. But there's only so much information you can get when it's just answering questions. And the discussion was, okay, well, why don't you do a little bit more of the good stuff that we do in terms of the transparency and the presentations that had previously been maybe invite only or maybe put behind a paywall or just done as kind of separate events, do them as part of the fans forums. And I went last year. Were you there?
Well, yeah, we all went last year.
Yeah, and it was just incredible. The presentation that you get from Liam, that you get from Jez, that you get from Michael, like everybody just does their presentation, and it just it helps just provide that context behind all the decision making. So honestly, I implore anybody who's not done it, and obviously if you've done it, you already know how good it is. You'll probably want to do it again. Fair enough. But I genuinely do implore anyone who's not been to one, or anybody who does have doubts about the people that are in those positions of power at the football club, just go listen to them speak for a while and come out of it. And you don't have to change your mind. You don't have to suddenly say, oh, well, I really like Jez George. Of course, it's an opinion-based game, is football. But at least you'll come out of it with the understanding of exactly what is being done. Because what I don't like is if someone will say, oh, well, he doesn't do anything. And I'm not just saying that about Jez, but about anyone. Or he just does everything, and then he doesn't do anything, kind of thing. And you think, go and listen to those talks.
It's a way. It's a way to
so much.
Yeah, it's a way to inform the opinion that you have. Like I've seen people saying, "That's my opinion. I'm not going to change it." It's like, well, that's not the way to. That's not necessarily the way to live anyway. Like if you're not allowing your opinion to be swayed or changed by new information, then that's probably something that you need to look at. But if you have a strong opinion on something and you want to go and understand maybe a little bit more about why other people have a differing opinion, then it's probably worth going. Because I went last year and there was some stuff that I was unsure about, but I came away really positive. They spoke a lot about the commercial side of things, and some of the initiatives and the incentives that they've put together as a club, and they're now part of. And it's that kind of thing that I think people don't you'll never see that unless you go to these things or do a little bit more reading than just what's on Twitter. And it makes you understand, okay, right, if we're in a division where you're not going to get anywhere unless you have major investment or a major boost to your cash flow, the things that we're trying to do so far off the pitch will hopefully feed into it again in the long term. It's not going to pay dividends straight away. We're not going to partner with somebody today and then 6 months time we're going to have a massive influx of cash. It will be a long-term thing, and I think that's where the club are doing the right things. For the long-term future of the club, I think that's probably what they're doing, and they're doing it well. One more thing actually that I did want to touch on. Clive mentioned on Blue Sky this week his thoughts on the situation around the National League potentially allowing 3 clubs up. So I think it sounds like all 72 National League clubs are going to be voting in favour of allowing 3 National League clubs into the EFL. And then...
I mean, they would.
Well, yeah, naturally. And I imagine there will probably be a similar number beginning with a 7 voting against the proposition. Maybe 1 or 2 that are in the relegation zone in League 2 may potentially say, yeah, all right, we'd like to come back up quicker. I mean, Clive's got some pretty strong opinions on it. I think there was a lot about the distribution of finances that is problematic in the National League, and it has been for a while. So I'd advise you to go and have a look at that and see what Clive said around that. I'm pretty much against it, to be honest. I know it's a really harsh division, but when you have teams that are essentially part-time playing in the National League, you need to draw a line and say, okay, if you want to be playing in the EFL, you have to be good enough to be playing in the EFL. And I know that there are, a couple of seasons ago, we saw it with Wrexham and Notts County. They were both smashing the points record, and then they didn't end up both coming up. But there's more to it than just, there are 2 teams, therefore they need to be good enough. I mean, your thoughts on that, Charlie? Hopefully it's not going to be a situation we'll need to worry about for a good few years. But I mean, it's a no from me, I think.
Yeah, I did an article on this actually about a year ago now, in fact, probably over a year ago, talking about this whole situation. And I get it, and I agree with the principle from the National League. I do. I think there should be 3 up, 3 down. Let's keep it consistent, even though, granted, League 2 to League 1 is 4 up, 4 down. I don't know. I'd probably just have the whole thing as 3 up, 3 down. And I agree with the principle. National League clubs should be able to come up into League 2 and join the EFL, because you've got to bear in mind that at that point, then it's joining a new governance body in the EFL rather than the National League. It gives you entry to new competitions like the League Cup. The FA Cup, it means you don't join that until the first round again, which can be quite good because you've got more of an opportunity to potentially be closer to the third round and things like that. I think there's more riches that aren't just based on prize money that you get from being in League 2 than you do from being in National League, and they can't be overlooked. So I 100% agree with the principle. However, you can't do that until you sort out fair financial distribution. Because
it's getting their own house in order first, isn't it?
Exactly, because all we're going to do then, and I'm not just talking about from in the EFL need to do it. I'm also saying, National League need to do it, EFL need to do it. The whole pyramid needs to do it. Otherwise, we're suddenly going to create this really sharp cliff edge at the arse end of League 2, falling into National League. Now, you've also got to bear in mind that a lot of the clubs that are towards the bottom end of League 2, and not all of them, and not all the time, but some of those clubs that are at the bottom end of League 2 and that find themselves there are often the clubs that we're talking about as basket case clubs. For example, your Swindon. Morecambe, exactly that. Newport and Accrington, sometimes you can put in there, although Accrington could at least try to be sustainable at times. And you just sit there and you think, so if there's going to be more likelihood that they get relegated into National League, where then suddenly there isn't quite the same riches that you get in League Two, well, yeah, all right, you can say, oh yeah, but it'll be easier for them to come back up next year. It's not quite how it works because they're going to be much less likely to be able to bounce straight back. So I'm all for it, but not yet. We have to get there's priority lists of this, and there are steps that have to be taken to resolve the current situation in EFL and the National League before we even think about allowing 3 up, 3 down, I think.
Yeah, just to clarify, I worded it very badly. I do agree. I think I should have essentially
said 20. I think it's 20. I think it's 21 out of the 24 teams are now full time in National League.
Yeah, so
that was the number either last year. It might be the one this year.
Yeah, so it should definitely be 3 promoted from the National League. I think the point that was in my head that I didn't get out is they need to get their house in order first, because it is.
I just think the whole of football does. I don't think it's just fair to say that it's just them. I just think the whole of football does. Because I mean, you can say that they do it, but then if they get theirs sorted, and then the teams that come up suddenly are. I mean,
the thing is, in the National League, it is absolutely the Wild West down there. Like it is absolute. It's crazy. And you say about clubs that are floating towards the bottom of, sinking towards the bottom rather of League Two. I don't think Morecambe are going to be a football club this time next year.
No, they won't be. They won't be.
I don't know. When their owner's been trying to sell them for as long as he has, and he hasn't found a buyer because it's whatever price he's put on it is ridiculous. I just think it's a genuine fear that we're going to lose more football clubs, and the National League won't help that because, it's a complex situation. I don't have all of the information, and I don't have, I am not the expert when it comes to this. That is an understatement. But I think it's a difficult conversation to have, and in due course, I would probably say yes. But right now, with Charlie, definitely not. So there we go.
Definitely not. Just not yet.
Yeah, that's what I say. In due course, yes, but right now, no. So there we go. Right, that is going to do us for the Stacey West podcast episode number 355. I didn't think we'd end the day talking about the National League, but there we go. Right, get yourself subscribed over on the YouTube channel. Tell a mate about the podcast. Get yourself subscribed on there. Go check out the blog. Go check out the previews. Go check out Jez's interview. Go check out Conor McGrandle's interview. And I think there's only one thing left to say. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.